Greetings. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome for those people listening for the first time, and welcome back to everybody who's a faithful listener of the podcast. This is the Anti-Social podcast. For those that aren't aware, I'm sure you're all aware, considering you clicked on it or have come to listen to it. But it's all about branding, and definitely ties in with the theme or some of the themes around this particular episode. So I won't spend too much time ranting and raving and rambling on, because we certainly do enough of this in this episode, and it's a pretty good one. So this week is Josh from Northlane. We've been trying to tee this one up for several months, but as we touch on in the chat, he's one busy guy, and Northlane's just been going ridiculously well over the last probably 18 months to 2 years, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of it slowing down in the near future either. So it's great to be able to have a chat with Josh and run through a bunch of things and just talk some shit for an hour or so, touching on heaps of cool things, talking about band promotion and marketing and whatnot, and also go off on a number of tangents about some self-development and meditation and yoga and getting into the right headset or mindset to really sort of make the most of your opportunities around you and really fulfill dreams and goals that you do have. And this sort of, I guess it ties in with this running theme that seems to pop up on almost every episode of the podcast about awareness and getting your head into the right spot. But it's an important thing, and maybe that'll end up being a long-term theme of this podcast. But anyway, hope you enjoy it. I had to sort of wrap it up really quickly towards the end, so apologies if it seems a little bit rushed right at the end of our discussion. But I was keeping a close eye on the time, because I know that Josh is quite a busy guy, and I'm also sort of sneaking this in between other things that need to be done. So, but we did have a great chat, and I think it definitely has opened the doors to some more discussions down the track, because there was heaps of things that we sort of knew that we could talk about at length, but just tried to rein it in a bit. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I'll put all the show notes and everything on antisocial.net. I'll worry about all the housekeeping at the end of the podcast and a few extra details about the little podcast party and whatnot that's happening in May. So anyway, enough rambling. Hope you enjoy this one with Josh from Northlane. I think the big thing that probably people who don't know a great deal about Northlane or yourself, I think it might be good to give people an indication of how much touring you guys have been doing over the last probably 18 months or so. Because every time I go to look up you guys and see where you guys are at, you're in the midst of being in Europe or elsewhere across the world, or in the midst of a big Australian tour as well. So you don't have to go down blow by blow, but what's the last sort of 18 months to 2 years looked like for you guys?
Oh, a blur. Yeah. Last year I was home for about 2 months, I think.
Yeah, wow.
Busy.
It's crazy, because even just looking at you guys this year, and I know we spoke sort of coming in towards the end of last year to try and tee this up, and you had a whole bunch of stuff lined up right until pretty much Christmas. And then I thought, oh yeah, cool. Then I thought I'll hit you up again sort of, January or whatnot. And then suddenly you're off on another tour, and then you're pretty much, from what I can see, flat chat until June, I think? End of June or...
Well, I've got 2 months off at the moment.
Yeah.
And then we go to Europe for some festival stuff. And then we've got Australia, and then we've got a bit more time off.
Yeah, cool.
But we're riding, so it's not really time off.
Well, I guess it's a bit of a reprieve in some case anyway. One thing that I think a lot of people that probably originate from my circles, so to speak, for the most part probably haven't experienced the level of touring that you guys have done to date. The big thing that I sort of think about and probably aware of is when you're touring to that extent and to that volume, what do you, I guess you or you guys as a collective do to try and stay on task and stay on the game? Because I know for a lot of other guys that I know, the shows sort of, you do a couple of weeks and that's about it, or you do like 3 shows and have a few days off. And so there's a lot more partying and indulging and whatnot. And I think you guys would no doubt have to have a pretty tight sort of schedule and routine put in place to keep you guys on the straight and narrow for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a healthy amount of, or unhealthy amount of partying, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of running when I was on tour, which is a cool way to see like other cities and stuff. Recently, I've actually been getting really into yoga. Funnily enough, my girlfriend got me into that, and I love it. So I'm going to start doing that while I'm on the road. But I mean, one of the things that's really helps me is just taking the time to try and go and explore wherever you are, which isn't really that interesting when you're in America. But when you're in Europe, like it's definitely something that keeps me on an even keel. And I mean, we're always riding as well, so we do a lot of riding on the road, especially on bus tours in Europe, like, because we'll be at a venue from midday or something, so we've got a lot of time to burn, and if we're not exploring or something, we like to sort of divert our energy to that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, definitely maximising the time, because I've seen a few photos over the last few months of you guys on the bus, and you've got like a bit of a recording setup there, just to keep you guys moving and riding.
Well, you kind of have to, like, when you tour as much as we do, you don't really have the luxury of just partying while you're on tour all the time, because everything kind of rests on the momentum of your band, and if you're not riding while you're on the road, you stand to lose that momentum. So it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know I sound really old saying this, but I know you're a little bit younger than me. But even with a bit of youth on your side, doing that much of a heavy sort of schedule, no doubt that'd impact if you're sort of focusing more on sort of the indulging side of things rather than sort of keeping yourself sort of up to speed with your playing and recording and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I mean, at first it was all fun and games, and then as things got more serious, we got more mature about the way we conduct ourselves and how we spend our time every day, I guess. But it's, I think it's just it's like anything as you grow up, your priorities change and you start planning for the future a bit more. And it kind of relates to what we do on the road as well, because, I guess that's us just becoming more mature about, what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, just seeing the fruits of the hard work coming into play now and what you guys have sort of done, over the last few years, but especially probably in the last 12 months, it's definitely more fuel to really stay disciplined and keep working towards the next goal, the next achievement that you guys are trying to work towards.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't even call it discipline, because we've gotten to a point where for us, creating is still a bit of a grind from time to time. But after what we've been through as a band in the last couple of years, we're just appreciating and enjoying still being able to do this a lot more than doing it because we have to. And because of that, like, we're writing at the moment, and it's being really enjoyable because I guess the vibes are just really, really positive right now for us, and we're really excited about what we're going to do with our next record and where we can go with it, because we kind of used our last one to test the waters a bit and see, what would work and what wouldn't work if we wanted to get a bit weird. And, now we have that in hindsight. We know kind of where we can and can't go, so it's time to sharpen our tools a bit, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess with moving forward and looking at that next sort of release, and I guess whatever plans and sort of goals you guys have put in place, no doubt having that appreciation of where you've come from certainly sort of fuels that I guess that desire to sort of take it to that next level. Because I mean, I just sort of looked at your tour in June and looked at the venues you guys are playing and just sort of went, well, shit, all right, you guys have sort of hit that next, you've certainly hit that next level now. And I know you guys are doing it with another band as well, with In Heart's Wake, but, you're playing big venues. So no doubt that's the horizon for you guys. Yeah,
well, I mean, I kind of have an idea of where I want this to go, and I don't think we're there yet. It's funny that it's In Heart's Wake that we're doing this co-headline thing with, because it was only a couple of years ago that we were playing on the floors of cafes and youth centres around the country with those guys. They're good friends of ours from years ago, and we've kind of seen them develop into, a reputable act of their own over the last few years, and it's been really cool to watch that happen to our friends, and they've just completely worked their asses off, and I guess we have as well. And it's cool, man, and it's we're starting to see a bit of a development over in Europe and the UK as well, and that's becoming almost like a second home to us too. So I really don't have anything to complain about, man. Like it's still a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard lifestyle. We don't make much money doing it at all, but I'm 26 years old. I've been around the world a couple of times now playing music for other people and made a lot of friends along the way, and I don't really have any regrets or anything to complain about.
Absolutely. I think that sort of takes the negative pressure off the whole situation about, having that. It's good to have the hunger to try and take it to that next level. And as you said, you've got a vision of where you want it all to go, but it's probably positive pressure that you put on yourself more so than that stress, because you've got that appreciation of where you're currently at now.
Well, I mean, the stress has been there. Like, I don't like to bring it up, but about 18 months ago, we had a change of vocalists, and then only a handful of weeks after our new guy Marcus came into the band, we did a single, and then we were pretty much on the road from there until we had to go record a new album with him. And that was the most stressful period of my life. We felt like our entire career was just on the edge of a cliff, and if we screwed up, it was all going to be over for us. And now that we're on the other side of such a difficult challenge, it's made everything a lot clearer in hindsight to us, and a lot, we're much more appreciative of where we are now, purely because we've been in a precarious situation where it all could have ended, and it thankfully didn't. But I mean, it's I guess we're in a pretty good place now, and I'm really looking forward to what we do next.
It's pretty massive to be able to even acknowledge that, because I think most people sort of work in that autopilot sense where they just keep plowing through and not really sort of looking back from where they've come from, or or always worried about sort of what's coming next. And I think even just for you to say that and go, you know what, we've been through some adversity and be able to come out the other side, and now there's a new sort of, I guess, lease of life, so to speak, to really sort of embrace the next chapter.
Well, I mean, that's it, and it doesn't really matter what you do. If you play music, or you own a business, or you have any career at all, anyone who's really driven in what they're doing is always going to be looking forward, always going to be planning ahead, thinking about what they're going to do next, thinking about what stepping stone they need to take next to get to whatever their end goal is, or goal for their next year or 3 years, 5 years, whatever. I think that's really healthy. And before I played music, I was a bit of an athlete, and I kind of had the same approach to what I was doing then with what I do now. And in the way of goal setting and really being motivated to get to where I want to go. But it's also very healthy sometimes to just take a step back and acknowledge how far you've come, because not only does it give you a sense of reward, it also gives you a sense of appreciation and allows you to identify anything you may have been able to do better, or any certain paradigms of thinking that may have been healthy or healthier if they were approached from a different perspective. And one of the things that I've found through what we went through in the last 18 months or so, that was really, really healthy for me, was trying to approach things without expectation and without ego, and just acknowledging when things weren't going very well, and just doing my best to deal with them, rather than having an expectation of receiving something like I deserved it, which is a kind of a pattern that a lot of artists fall into. Once they experience a bit of success, it becomes an expectation for them. And sometimes a kick in the teeth is really what you need to be able to sort of reach the next level with your music and your art, but also personally too.
You certainly get complacent if you sort of go down that path, that particular mindset where
complacent, arrogant. It comes down to the person, but I mean, the old saying that things that don't kill you make you stronger it absolutely rings true, and I can't say enough about it. Yeah, I really can't.
Absolutely. And it's this actually, well, two things I just thought of straight off the bat. To get that mindset, and I think it takes quite a bit for somebody to get to that point, because most people don't really give themselves a chance to even try and get to that sort of way of thinking, let alone be able to maintain it or whatnot. Well, not maintain it, because we all sort of have our peaks and dips and whatnot along the way. But where did you, obviously you would have had to have pulled that sort of mindset from somebody else and a bit of inspiration or whatever. Was there anybody in particular or anything that you'd read or to try and get you onto that sort of path of thinking?
There's been a lot of inspirational people that I've met in my life. One of them being my mother, because she works in a real male-dominated industry, and my parents are doing fairly well for themselves now, but when I was really young, they weren't very well off at all, and my mum was studying law and engineering at university while I was a baby, and having to deal with that, and being completely dirt poor is something that has always inspired me because of how hard she works. But I think the real shift in the way I approached everything in my life really came from suffering mental illness when I was about 18, and having to cope and deal with that, and then try and move forward in life afterwards, is because I kind of had to challenge every way of thinking that I had to change the way I approached every situation for the better, and the skills that I learned there, I sort of apply to everything.
It's a bit of a, this might sound really, really, really blunt, but it's almost like a do or die approach where you have to sort of reprogram the way that you're thinking in order to survive in a way, especially at that age. Like I probably wouldn't class myself as going through a really sort of heavy period of struggling from a mentally sort of a mental perspective, but I went through I guess a lot of challenges around that stage where you're trying to work out who you are, and all trying to control external influences which you don't usually have much control over, and how to interpret it, and trying to follow what other people expect of you, and then what the things that mean the most to you, and it can be quite a daunting period. So, I mean, I guess it gets to that point where you sort of go, you know what, I need to really sort of change the way that, or as best as I can, change the way that I view things. Otherwise, it could get to quite a dire situation long term.
Well, that's it, man. Like it's a really hard time for any kid, and mental illness is really common at that age too, and it's a really, really sad thing, and kids just, I feel like at such a young age you don't really know what's normal and what isn't yet, because you're still growing up. And for me, I was getting to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed every day because I just didn't want to deal with everyday life, and it got to the point where I was admitted to a hospital for mental care, and I spent almost 2 months in there when I was 18 years old, and had to study for my HSC in a little box. And it was really tough, and it's something I don't really talk about very often, but I think it's really been instrumental in developing myself into who I am today, and developing the sort of mental approach that I have to everything I do, because that was kind of my lease on life. You spoke about that in the context of a band, but for me, on a personal level, that was my new lease of life when I was about 18 years old, going through some really serious depression, and coming out the other side of that. And it still took me a couple of years to find my feet, like I went to uni and dropped out, and Northlane happened, and here I am today.
It's I guess you've seen a bit of the other side. So as you said before, with what happened sort of over the last couple of years with the band, you've had that experience where you can really sort of appreciate coming out the other side of it.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to external influences you can't control, the only thing you can really do is just make the most of whatever you have to work with. And that goes for anything, whether it's someone you have to replace in your band, or the time that you have here on Earth, or whatever you're talking about. It's I think the same principles ring true.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just going back to what you said before about picking up yoga just recently. And I assume that's you've only just sort of begun to do it, but is there anything that you've been able to pull immediately from doing that sort of links into these things that we just spoke about? Because I did it a little bit in high school, where they had it as a class that was available, and we just all took it up because we were lazy and just wanted to get out of doing sport. But it was funny because the very little aspects of it that I paid attention to have stuck with me, and it sort of links into the whole, not so much from the physical point of view, because I know yoga can be quite physical as far as pushing your body to certain extremes, but from a meditation point of view and a calmness, there's things that have just stuck with me just from those little bits of info that I remembered from back then. So I assume that you probably picked up a few things immediately from that.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, I mean, meditation was one of the things that got me through the struggles I had with mental health, and I kind of eased off it quite a bit. And it probably would have been very helpful for me to not ease up on it, because it is such a helpful thing to do. And I'd been away on tour for quite a while, and sprained my ankle, and I like to run a lot, and I couldn't do that when I got home because of my ankle. So when it started to get better, my girlfriend was like, "Oh, why don't you come to yoga with me?" And I was like, "Oh, yoga, like, screw that, what a waste of time." But I did it. and I loved it, and I was really bad at it at first, and I'm still not that good at it. And the type of yoga she does is Bikram, which is like Thai, and it's done in like a 45-degree room. It goes for 90 minutes, so it's extremely mentally challenging. But once I started to become accustomed to it, the aspect of meditation and the benefits of that really started to come to fruition for me. And I've found that it's been able to help me be a more sober person and be more on a straight line of thinking. And, you know, I'm more able to connect my thoughts together. I'm more able to create. It's been good for my guitar playing too. It's really loosened my wrists up and made me more aware of my body and, you know, what everything's doing, and helped my concentration too. And it's been great for my fitness as well. And, you know, even I experience back pain from time to time because I fractured one of my vertebrae in a car accident a couple of years ago. And ever since I started doing this yoga, just all that pain's gone away. Like a lot of guitar players experience tightness in their wrists and elbows, and I don't have any of that. Yeah, it's great, man. It's a really hard workout, but you know, you wake up the next day feeling fantastic, which I can't really say the same for any other really intense form of exercise. It really exercises your mind too, especially like being in that hot room. It's like hard just to breathe in there. It's hard just to do anything. You know, the first couple of classes I did, I would get through like 2 or 3 of the movements and spend the rest of the 90 minutes just lying on the floor because I couldn't move. But you know, over time, your mind learns to ignore the heat and ignore the struggle and focus on your breath and focus on what your body's doing. And you know, that level of concentration really helps you in all other aspects of your life. And I'm not the kind of person to push my lifestyle onto other people, but I think it's an extremely beneficial thing that a lot of people could get a lot out of.
It's funny because I guess there's all that stigma attached to things like meditation and yoga and whatnot. It's all that sort of woo-woo, sort of hippie sort of stuff. And I think for people
I'm a bit of a hippie dude.
But I think it's not even. I think they're just old stigmas, and I think people that haven't been exposed to it or have grown up in an environment that's never had any focus or acknowledgement of those sort of practices are naturally gonna, probably show some resistance to it. And I mean, growing up, I never had any sort of apart from one uncle that was a bit out there and definitely liked a bit of sort of hippie culture. It was never seen as something that really should be focused on. And it's only been the last sort of few years that I've been able to open my mind a bit more to that. And I definitely see it as I think it's just instrumental. I think everybody, you're not going to get everybody, but I think everybody should be doing, a form of meditation or, some form of physical sort of spiritual practice, not going down a religious sense, but sort of an internal sort of practice just to get yourself sort of clear mentally.
I mean, spirituality and religion are two completely different things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can be a spiritual person without being a religious person. I think religion just helps a lot of people get there, but one of the things I've always wondered was, imagine how much better of a place the world would be if everyone learned how to do that stuff at school, or if there was an importance placed on, on what those activities teach you,
Absolutely.
And what they do for people.
And you probably find that the amount of medication that's getting thrown down the mouths of young kids, it will probably dramatically decrease because they will be a lot calmer anyway because they're learning the right practices early on in the piece.
I know, and that's a whole nother can of worms you just opened. You don't want to get me talking about that, but I've been a victim of that system, and none of that shit ever helped me as much as meditation and yoga ever did.
Yeah.
Or even just exercise.
Yep.
but there's, I feel like there's very little importance placed on nutrition. There's very little importance placed on exercise, and most of all, there's very little importance based on your own personal spirituality in our society. I almost feel like kids are being engineered in their school to fit into the social norms and social molds, and you're kind of seeing that being broken with my generation to an extent, but the expectations and the systems are still there to sort of direct you into this, thing of what you should be. And I come from a very conservative right-wing family. My dad's side are all farmers. My mum's side's all from the Defence Force and whatnot. And that's what I grew up around. And now I'm probably the complete opposite.
It's funny because I guess with a lot of, and yeah, we're definitely going down or opening a can of worms with all this, but I think, from an education point of view, they're still using a mold that's at least 100 years old. So we're still, the expectations and the social norms are things that have been around for at least a century, and we still think they're relevant now. And I guess you're right, like this generation that's coming through now and the next generation that's sort of just coming into sort of that adulthood, are starting to change that and shake it up a bit. But it's unfortunately when you're trying to change the way that I guess the human race interacts, especially in Western culture, it's not going to be a quick process. But there are positives and sort of bright lights out there with what the future will hold. But yeah, it's you can't expect us to grow or go in any sort of positive direction when we're still clinging on to things that I guess are becoming ancient.
Yeah, but like we're almost forced to, right?
Yeah.
You can't not buy into it. You can't not go to school. You can't not be exposed to mass media. I feel like there is a bit of an awakening happening at the moment because of the information age that we live in, but it's also a double-edged sword because it's far easier for all this to be ignored too. It's just really the people that are subscribing to it that are starting to enact change in their lives at the moment. But yeah, wow. If you want to go down this road, I guess we're going to be on the phone for the next 6 hours.
Yeah, well, I'll try and steer it back a bit. I guess, it's like music in the sense that, it's great for artists and musicians and bands and whatever now to get their music out there because the tools are there available. You can record at home and get a pretty decent quality of recording. You can promote yourselves online without the aid or the only option of having a record label behind you. And you can get out there to a certain extent, but that's the positives. But then the negatives and the challenges around that is that everybody can do that. So you've got more shit to sift through to find the gold. And when you're talking about ideals and new ways of thinking and all those sort of things out there.
Well, truth.
Well, yeah, truth, absolutely. There's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of stuff that's just people that are stuck in old ways of thinking or very sort of out there ways of thinking that have no truth associated with it. But if you've got a young, impressionable person that's online and they just happen to have, even from a social media point of view, and somebody just shares an article, that might even be satire. and most people don't even click on it. They just read the headline and then that's ingrained in their head. And it's just...
Coney.
Yeah.
Coney 2012, whatever it was. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's it, man. Like there's so much information out there. There's so much to learn and there's so much for people to benefit from and better their lives from and better the world from, better other people from, so much immensely helpful information. Like if it wasn't for the internet, I never would have been introduced to Bill Hicks, Terence McKenna, Alan Watts, like all these people throughout history that have had a huge impact on my life. But at the same time, there's so much shit out there too, and there's so much misinformation and misguidance. There was this thing I read this morning talking about, I think it was the CIA or somebody did a social experiment purely using social media, because that was the only information and news source that millions of people pay attention to now, and they managed to convince a few million people that the fucking world was flat. Like,
Yeah.
how is that even a thing?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
You know?
And then going back to, like, you know, even the struggles that young people have from a mental point of view to try and find their place in the world and in their at home or within their peers.
It's Pandora's box.
Oh, it is. It's just insane. Like, you know, the stress and the anxiety of trying to make some sense of your surroundings and the world around you. I mean, for some people, you've almost got no hope. So probably turning it back to what you said before, you know, having that sort of, whether it be yoga or a form of meditation or something like that, and learning those sort of practices in school would calm a lot of people down and at least be able to handle themselves internally, and then be able to have a bit of clarity to go, you know what, that sounds a little bit weird. Let me look into it a bit further to see whether there's any truth behind it, and if not, like, move on.
Well, critical thinking is something that's just it's so important. Like, imagine, I don't know if you're paying attention to the primaries in the US right now, but imagine how different those results would be if you know, all these American citizens were introduced to real critical thinking when they were at school. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but it's such an important thing, and the ability to critically think changes the landscape of the world that we live in, because it changes the way people vote. And by even just the way people vote, that changes the fabric of the society that they live in. And there's so many people that cannot critically think, and just because they've never been taught how, and they just take for granted all the information that's presented to them through the channels that, you know, they're targeted through. and it's so finely tuned to get into their head and make them angry about this and that. But, you know, it's something that I vehemently disagree with. And I, you know, funny thing is, one of the things I studied at university was marketing, and boy, like, when I look at that in hindsight, just the way that you're even taught in that system of education, even in the tertiary sense, to be able to manipulate people is just, it's almost criminal, but it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess maybe just, and the marketing's a good segue back into, we'll get it back on track, because there's a bunch of things tied in with the band that we can chat about. But the last thing I was just going to say about critical thinking, and maybe just a massive disclaimer, and I think most people that listen to this are pretty much well aware that this is not the case, but critical thinking doesn't mean be a conspiracy theorist either. Because that's
so much
just
of
as
that's
bad.
Horse shit too.
That's exactly right. And it may as well be, you know, the complete opposite in the sense of critical thinking, where I tend to find that a lot of people that are conspiracy theorists tend to come from probably, I shouldn't say a background, but tend to have a form of lower intelligence or a bit more closed-minded than your average person. So, you know, a lot more prejudice and associated with them. And it's, it definitely isn't a form of intelligence. And I think, you know, it's definitely good to question things and as you said, use that practice of critical thinking. But there's definitely an extreme version of that where you just take it way too far.
Well, that's it. And I mean, it goes back to the whole thing we were talking about, you know, the Pandora's box of information that is the age that we live in, because, you know, it's very easy to convince anyone about anything, and once again use Coney as an example for that. But you know, over time a lot of conspiracies have proven to be true, even though they're hard to believe, and a lot of them have proved to be false. And you know, I guess what all of this boils down to is I guess just you being aware of the immediate world that you live in, and starting with that. And, you know,
I think it's just taking a bit of responsibility for your own thoughts and your own actions, and then, you know, and part of that, you know, being critical, having critical thinking is showing some responsibility on your behalf and not just accepting things, or
that's the perfect way to put it.
Or not using sort of a conspiracy theory or something extreme on that end as an excuse for the way that you are or the way that you act or your surroundings or your environment as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. Well
said.
I'll dig us out of this hole that we went down. You mentioned studying marketing at uni, and for me, I guess
I did marketing and economics, actually.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I've got a massive interest in marketing, and I haven't studied it, but it's only just been, I guess, from a practicality of someone needing to do it in the band over the years, and I've just sort of fell into that sort of role, and I've had to really sort of pull a lot of information from other sources to try and work out the best way of moving things along and getting things out there, and I guess getting the right emotional reaction from people to get them to show interest in what you're doing. And was taking up those subjects in uni, was there a long-term purpose to picking them and tying that into the band? Like, did you learn those subjects with the purpose of being able to apply it into music, or was it more of a case that you're going to go down the path of a career in something that was a bit more sort of focused around those two subjects?
Yeah, I thought that was the career for me. I no longer think it. I actually want to go. I'm looking at re-enrolling in uni right now to further my education through open universities and do it online. But I won't look to complete the marketing or economics stuff I was doing. It did prove to be very helpful for what I'm doing with my band later down the track. And Northlane didn't start until I'd already been at uni for about 18 months or so, and it didn't get to the point where I had to leave until another 18 months after that. And it was purely because we were touring so much that I was failing subjects, even though I was passing everything, just because I wasn't getting the attendance that I needed to pass the courses. But it's helped me immensely. It really has. And I think, like, a lot of the knowledge that I picked up from economics has been very helpful for running the band from a business perspective, which is something that every successful band seems to have somebody in the band that's very business savvy. Even if they're not managing themselves, you kind of need to do it anyway. You kind of need to have that sort of that character within your band that can make sure everything that you're doing is for the best of everyone, and can sort of make the right decisions in that sense. But the marketing stuff helped a lot, and I think especially the stuff I learned about what they called it guerrilla marketing tactics, which is like ways of marketing through unconventional channels. From the perspective that I was taught at university, it was about tricking people into talking about something, but the importance of what it taught me was the fact that, especially now, and especially in my line of work, what's really important for the growth of your band is to have people genuinely excited about what you're doing and talking about it, because having these, regular people excited about what you're doing and sharing that excitement with others is so much more valuable than anything you could spend money on.
Well, I guess taking it to a very simple example, if you sit on Facebook for long enough and you get the amount of event invites for local shows or Facebook messages or statuses that pop up saying, do this, do that, or we need you guys to do this, or we need you guys to do that. And it's very much a case of bands and artists trying to get people to do things for them. And, going back to what you said, if you've got a sort of a genuine approach where you're creating a culture and a feeling around what you do, people gravitate towards it because they want to gravitate towards it and they want to be a part of it and feel something about it. And then that just turns into word of mouth and it gets more people involved. And it's a very smart way of doing things. And
but I think the most important aspect to it is your interaction with your fan base or your listeners or whatever you want to call them. Just, what you choose to share with them, what you choose to interact with them about. If all you're talking to them about is buy tickets to this show, buy this piece of merch, some of them are going to do it, but they're not going to feel special unless you're sharing more unconventional things with them and talking to them about what they want to talk about and what they want to see. And, a lot of that is the behind the scenes stuff that a lot of bands don't share. And honestly, I think Northlane's gotten progressively worse at doing this. But I think it's really important to just take a step back from your social media platforms and go, oh, this isn't really about me trying to push something. It's about me trying to share something, and it's really important for bands to kind of acknowledge that although conventionally you're encouraged, especially as a young band, playing support slots and whatever, to just spam people, it's not really the right way to grow your brand. You need to be interacting with people and sharing your experiences with them. And in turn, they might be interested in what you're doing.
It's funny because about 10 years ago when I moved to Sydney, and I guess with all the Lord stuff, we sort of got that whole thing moving around then. And for the first probably year, and I was living in Newtown, and for anyone who is listening doesn't understand, that's sort of inner Sydney area, inner west area.
I'm going there this afternoon, actually.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Awesome. And, it's a great place and it's close to everything and there's a lot of sort of like-minded people in the area. But that first 12 months was probably the most busy period of the band for at least the first five or so years, because at least from my end and a couple of the other guys in the band at the time, we were always out. We were always, and not from a partying point of view, but we were at other people's shows. We were making an effort to go and talk to people and become friends with people. And it wasn't because we had a motive there and we were trying to get something from somebody. We were just out there to connect with more people. So we found
the right approch.
We just had a posse of people that would just automatically come to any of our shows because we formed a connection with them, and there was a friendship there or some rapport there, or enough just for them to go, you know what, that I've had drinks with that person, or I've had a chat to that person, and they're really cool, and you know what, I want to go out and support and be a part of what they're doing and be closer to that I hate using this word, but that vibe that's created, from having those interactions. So we found that, like, in that first year or so, it was just incredible for the band to get a bit of that second lease of life, changing the name of the band and whatever at the time, because we put a lot of ground roots sort of legwork in to really just start connecting with people again. And we haven't done a lot of that in the last few years because, well, for a whole range of reasons.
But your priorities change as you get older too.
Absolutely, it's a lot harder to get out and start consuming the same level of the amount of alcohol. but you have to find other ways, and we're definitely on a different scale to you guys. But it's more of about.
It's the same principle.
It is, and you've got to find your core audience, and we've got a group of very, very loyal people that will just blindly buy whatever we get. And what we try and do is focus on those people and give them as much empowerment and make them feel part of the band, because the band's not 4 people or however many people are in the band. It's everybody that's attached to it. And so if we make them part of it, it's sort of like a sports team. you want to barrack
Oh,
for the team that you love, and you wear the colours, and sometimes you go to the extremes and get tattoos and whatever it might be, but it becomes your branding, it becomes part of you and part of your identity. So
man, I'll use an example here. The best band that I've seen do that as I've grown up was Slipknot. Just the way that they had their maggots, they called them, and it was like I was one of them. I was one of those dudes. I was one of those Slipknot fans as a kid, and I don't really play in what I call a metal band anymore, but I grew up in that culture, and they were so good at capturing that, and making you feel like you're part of a family. And it's making me all nostalgic now.
But and especially, I mean, a lot of bands, and I think a lot of bands that have come from your neck of the woods as far as genre and even location in Western Sydney, there's been so much of a focus on that age group where you're sort of looking at your high school kids, ranging from sort of 13, 14 up to 17, 18, where a lot of those kids are trying to work themselves out. They don't know what they like, or they follow whatever's sort of going, across the school at that point in time, and whatever trends are happening, and very impressionable. And I think a lot of success from bands like yourself and a lot of other great Australian bands is that you guys put the hard yards in and really made an effort to focus on that sort of demographic. Just from the outside looking in.
Well, in our early days, absolutely. Like we used to do a lot of under 18s and all ages stuff, and over time, as our music's matured as well, so is our fan base. And most of the people that come to our shows now are sort of 18 to 22. So a lot of them are in Australia, especially, are younger fans that have grown up, but in other parts of the world, they're people of that age that gravitated towards the music. And it's funny because while I look at our fan base around the world, it's a little different everywhere. But the age group is kind of the same that listen to the band. But you're right, like a lot of very successful acts start out by appealing to sort of that age group. And what makes them really successful is if they can still resonate with those people as they grow older. There's a lot of like teeny pop bands that are huge for a year or two, but then their fan base grows 2 or 3 years older and kind of moves on, and the band doesn't. I think it was who was it? Somebody. I have a feeling it was Scott from Anthrax did an interview that I read a couple of years ago, and he said that your fan base reinvents and changes every 3 years or so. And if you don't reinvent and change who you are in 3 years, they're not going to care about you anymore. And that's so true, and it's so relevant. And you can either write music that's absolutely timeless, or you can develop and sort of reinvent yourself as you go, or try and do both. And the biggest bands in the world are the ones that have done both. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's not even a case of even changing the sound, so to speak. It's probably just ensuring that you're keeping a fresh approach, going back to the marketing side of things. Like a really good example that I see here in Australia with a lot of, I guess, more of your metal bands is that the target audience is always sort of your probably getting to your mid-20s up into your mid-30s, late 30s. And there's such a massive push to try and win those people over, and if in some cases a real desperation to try and get those people to pry themselves off the couch and come out. But the thing is a lot, as soon as you sort of get to like those late 20s, that's when, from a society point of view, most people tend to get into debt. They get a mortgage, they're settling down with somebody, they're having children, they've got a bit of a career on the go. So there's a lot of additional responsibilities and priorities. So the whole culture around going out and, even if it's just from live entertainment or from an alcohol and a partying point of view, it definitely changes. And I see a lot of shows across the country, but especially in Sydney, where you rock up and that show's been promoted
directly towards an audience that very rarely go out anymore. And there's no focus to go, you know what, we need, those people are still around and they'll come out every once in a while, but, you know, we need to direct our attention back to those people that are just coming out for the first time, you know, people who just turned 18. Or even if you're smart enough, start, you know, promoting to the people that can't quite get to the shows yet because then they're underage, and prime them up ready so they're excited and they want to come out to a pub and see a band play. But it's that's a big thing I see within that sort of those circles in Australia at the moment. And I think it is changing slowly, but it's very slow.
There's another factor too, though, and that's as you get older, you kind of cling on to what resonated with you in regards to art when you were growing up. And that's why, like, a lot of people's tastes in music don't really change once they get past about 25 or 30. Which is really significant too, because then they become more difficult. You know, what you're saying is absolutely right about them going out less and whatnot because they have all these other responsibilities, but they're more inclined to go out for a band that really matters to them because it resonated with them as they were growing up, and they also become harder to entertain with something that's new, I think. Absolutely.
And that's probably why you know, bands like from an Australian perspective, like Cold Chisel and I mean AC/DC's global, but you know, a lot of those bands, the core audience that comes out to those types of shows are people that don't normally go out to see live music. They're reliving a nostalgic period of their life, and it's probably why cover bands do pretty well in pubs and clubs as well.
Absolutely, man.
They don't care about the original music, and I've actually seen a few. I don't think they're around as much anymore, but there was a few sort of 80s sort of cock rock tribute bands going around, and it was all covers, but every once in a while they were trying to be sneaky and throw an original in there, and you watch the floor just completely disappear. That's their toilet break or going to the bar and getting a new drink, because they're just that audience isn't there to hear new music. They want to relive their past, they want to relive the good times and that nostalgic sort of feel to it, and that's why that stuff's so popular.
It's funny, man, because we recently did some regional shows around Australia, and one of them was in WA. It was a ripper of a gig for us, but one of the guys from my band was talking to the venue manager, and we saw a poster for an AC/DC cover band that played there the night before, and they'd left the set list on the stage. And we were like, oh, yeah, how was this gig? And he said it was like the biggest attendance they've ever had. It's over like six or 700 people in this little town in WA to watch an AC/DC cover band.
It's incredible.
Unbelievable, huh?
And it's funny because, I mean, a lot of people in bands that are really putting their heart and soul into original music and being creative, I mean, that can be quite a frustrating and, I guess, deflating thing.
It is, man.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It is. But, you know, I mean, I guess that's where you need to focus your attention in the right area and stop worrying about those people that are weekend warriors, and, you know, focus on the people that are probably a bit more enthused about new music, and you do tend to find that it's younger people. And then that has a flow-on effect to the older sort of generation after time, when there's more hype around a band and whatever. But I still think for a lot of bands, even starting out now, or it's not even just starting out, any bands that are out there now that might be at a certain plateau, you know, I think it's all about focusing on that younger demographic, you know, the 18-year-olds or the people that are just about to hit legal age, you know, at least in Australia, you know, going out to pubs and whatnot.
You're absolutely right, but the most important thing is that you're playing it for yourself and you're doing what sounds good to you and what you enjoy to play.
Yep, absolutely.
Because otherwise, even if you do manage to build a career out of it, you're going to hate
it. That's it. Absolutely. Just going back to marketing really quickly, with you guys now, and I know, I mean, from my perspective, you guys seem to have a lot of sort of support behind you guys. And I was watching one of your video clips from last year. I think it was for Impulse, and the production on that just looks ridiculous. And obviously the sound you guys are getting now is pretty up there. Would you still class yourselves as a DIY band, or is it a bit more of a balance between having, you know, support from a great label and additional things, sort of helping take care of a lot of those things that a lot of other bands have to look after themselves?
Well, I think this is a really interesting question, because yes, we do have the support. The support is there, but every band that's successful at heart is a DIY band. I was recently on tour in the States towards the end of last year, and when we played in LA, some of the guys from this band called Of Mice and Men came to hang out with us and the other band we were out with, Volumes, and the Of Mice guys, their band's doing very well at the moment. And they recently toured with Linkin Park in the States, and they told me that Linkin Park is the most hands-on band that they've ever met. Like, every single person in that band has a DIY approach to what we're doing. Is like intrinsically involved in the business, is intrinsically involved in everything that happens. Because I don't think, you know, while having management is fantastic, really the best way to look at that is having this person work for you as a delegate, because no one's ever going to care as much about what you do as yourself. Even though they might dedicate their life to it, they're never going to care as much about your art as you do. No one's ever going to work as hard as you will work for what you have made for yourself. And if you can kind of use the resources that you build up with success to kind of work for your plan and your vision, you're going to be much more successful than letting the reins go to somebody else. Because the moment you lose control over what you're doing, the moment, you know, everything falls apart. It all has to be your vision. That video clip you're talking about was actually filmed by a guy who's a uni student, and he's not even studying that stuff at uni. He just does it on the side for fun. And it didn't cost very much at all. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because you were saying earlier in the podcast that it's amazing how you can produce music from a bedroom that sounds, you know, pretty good. You can also produce video clips that look pretty good. But, you know, in this kind of day and age, you're forced to do that because music doesn't really sell anymore. The budgets that record labels are willing to advance you to do this kind of stuff are a lot lower than they used to be. So you have to be a lot more innovative and resourceful in the way that you're going about putting all these things together, you know?
I think it's definitely upskills everybody, doesn't it? I mean, the old stigma against people in bands is, you know, the old 80s drunken rock star, and the label looks after everything and babies them and carts them around the country on tour, and you know, there's only so much expertise that they bring to the party, and that's usually just from a purely on-stage performance point of view. But now the industry's, because it's changed so much, it's forced people to become really multi-skilled and not just, you know, the creative aspect or the performance aspect of being, you know, and this is a horrible word for a lot of purists, but an entertainer. You know, you've got all these other skills that are being developed, and you've got people that take a big interest in band management, merchandising, marketing, and tour management, and all sorts of things now. And you know, I'd actually be quite interested to see what sort of breakdown you guys would have with, you know, whether you've got clear tasks or whether there's certain things that somebody in the band looks after and other people look after other things.
Well, I think this is a really relevant topic. One of the things that I've come to learn is a real recipe for success is playing everyone that you're associated with to their strengths. So whether or not that's within your band or within the people that work for your band, if you're fortunate enough to be in that position, you need to really put them to work for what they're good at. In the way that my band works, I don't really touch any of the music writing that happens. because the other guitar player in my band, John, is an extremely talented songwriter. He works best by himself. And for us, what we found has worked really well is if I kind of took care of the business side of my band and my guys trusted me to make those correct decisions, and we in turn trusted John and gave him his own space to write the music, and that's why it worked. The moment you start stepping on each other's toes because of reasons of ego or whatever they might be, the moment you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're not really going to get the most out of people's talents. And that applies to, in my position, the people that work for me as well, because while I direct what happens to an extent, I don't, tell my manager how to pitch us for a tour. I don't tell my designer how to design something. If I have merchandise ideas, I send them to him, and that's where, all of that begins, is what our concepts and ideas are. But, when it comes to things like artwork, I say, I might outline a bunch of elements that I like for him to start with, or a concept, but I let him do the art. I let the guy that's doing my video clip to have creative control over that, because that's his specialty. You're going
to get more out of it.
Exactly. It's very important. You almost become like a director of sorts, because you're, putting all these people to work for you. But, and it all comes back to you at the end, but you need to give them responsibility and creative control in whatever their area of expertise is. The reason why a lot of small businesses fail is because people might not realize the importance and value of their time, and they're spending all their time correcting their books instead of focusing on why their business is a successful entity in the first place. They lose sight of what they're really doing, and that leads to failure. And I've seen that happen. Like I worked in cafes and stuff when I was at uni, and it's okay to relinquish control of certain things that you oversee to people who are good at that. Like the amount of people that work for us is a very long list. We have a bookkeeper, an accountant, a manager, an assistant manager, a logistics manager, booking agents in US, Europe and Australia. We have people that sell our merchandise for us in all different territories. And, when it comes to developing new designs, I listen to what they have to say for all their parts in the world, because they know what they're talking about, and then deliver to them something that they think is going to work. But on a much smaller level within a band, like if somebody's really good at a certain thing, you should just let them do it. You shouldn't say, oh, we're a band, so we have to write our songs together. We have to have input on everything that happens, because it's a really inefficient way of operating.
Yeah, absolutely. You're only going to get so far, and as you said before, that ego point of view just comes in and can really sort of destroy.
There's so much
anything.
Ego in music, man, and it's so unnecessary. And it's so funny, because some of the loveliest people that I've met in this line of work have been from some of the most successful bands imaginable. Like one of the loveliest dudes I met, I only met him when I was about 16, 17. I was literally walking down the street in Sydney, and I bumped into Monkey from Korn. And I just said to him, like, look, dude, I don't want to keep you or anything, but, your band is one of the reasons I started playing guitar, because I used to love Korn when I was a kid, man. They were one of the bands at that time, and he was more interested in talking to me about what I was doing than what I was what I was asking him. And all the guys that have been pricks have been the ones from the bands that never quite got there, Another dude that I met recently who I can't say enough good things about is this guy called Monty, and he used to play in a band called Prong. I actually went to the ESP factory with him in Japan, and he plays guitar in Madonna now. And he's one of the loveliest people I've managed, I've ever come across in music, and he has zero ego. He was telling me all these crazy stories about all these people that he's met, but not once did he brag, not once did he try and, tell me who he was or what he did. You know what I mean?
It comes back to what you said before about, having that
that's
awareness.
Why these people are successful, though.
Yeah, that's it.
Because they don't give a shit. They don't realize. They know that self-promotion is not what's important. Or promotion of their ego.
That's it. They don't have to sell themselves all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You let what matters do the speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's somebody who's, personally empowered and is comfortable in their own skin, and they've got nothing to prove apart from prove to themselves, in a positive sense, from a growth point of view.
That's all you can ever prove.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's right. So it's I've met I guess both ends of the spectrums over the years, and you are right. 9 times out of 10, the people that are, more or less dicks are the people that are either struggling at a particular point in their career or have just never got to that level of success, because that, and more than likely it's due to that attitude that probably filters into the rest of the band that they work with as well. I mean, it's just, yeah.
I mean, there's so many factors to success in music, and, even the concept of success, like what is success? That's a completely different discussion. There's too many factors to boil it down to personality, but personality is such a massive factor to self-fulfillment and your sense of success and how satisfied you feel with what you've done with the world in your life. And this kind of backtracks to stuff we were talking about much earlier, about even going back to yoga and meditation and what that teaches you, because it kind of makes you into a person who is more likely to be successful in the ways that I just outlined, because you learn to become more content with yourself.
Absolutely. And, it's about what you can control and what you can't control. And I think a lot of the downfall for a lot of people is they worry too much about what they can't control. So, there's a lot of factors to success, as you said, but, you may as well put yourself in the best position that you can to at least increase your chances of whatever that success might be for you.
Well, you just have to be willing to, accept whatever the universe has in store for you. and you never know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up for now. But I think we might have to catch up later in the year when you got a bit more time, and we'll open up a few more cans, because I think there's quite a few cool things we can have a chat about.
Sounds great, man. I look forward to it.
Too easy. All right, man. Well, I'll let you go, and we'll catch up soon. And all the best for the next couple of months of somewhat relaxation, and then the touring after that.
No worries. Thanks, Andy. It's been a good chat.
Awesome. All right, take care, man.
All right, see ya.
All right, catch up. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I really hope you enjoyed that one. As I always say, every single episode. And like I said at the start, a massive welcome to anybody who's tuning in for the first time. I hope you got something out of the episode and enjoyed it enough that you might feel inclined to go back and listen to previous episodes, or subscribe for what's going to come forth in the future as well. And once again, a massive thank you to everybody who continues to listen week in, week out. I'll have all the show notes on andysocial.net. If it's not on the front page, just click on the podcast link in the menu, and I'll give all the show notes from all the previous episodes, so you can check all that out, including the details from this episode itself. I will have links to Northlane's music in there. I'm assuming that the majority of you who are listening to this podcast episode will already be aware of Northlane and already be aware of their music. But in the off chance that there are a few of you that haven't got to the point where you wanted to give them a shot, I do encourage you to give them a go and check out the links that I post up, because I think you'd be pleasantly surprised with what they're doing. And there's definitely a reason as to why they're getting the success and the accolades and the popularity that they currently have with the band, they can definitely back this up, and there's a reason for it. So give it a shot. There's some great stuff out there, and yeah, hope you dig it. A couple of quick things before we wrap it up, and please bear with me and just hold on just for a moment, just in case there's something here that might be of interest to you. So first of all, really quickly, anybody who's been a long time listener, episode 11, where I interviewed a good friend of mine, Stephen Ryan, he's just been named Property Investor of the Year through Your Investment Property magazine. So massive congratulations to Stephen. That's a massive feat and a massive achievement. And I think to be able to be awarded that title goes to show that you've achieved a fair bit to reach that sort of accolade. In particular, Stephen owns 4 properties now, so he just picked up his 4th property not too long ago. He's got 3 in Sydney, in Marrickville, and 1 in Maruka in Brisbane. So 1 in New South Wales and 3 in New South Wales and 1 in Queensland. His portfolio at the moment is sitting at 2.5 million, and he's been able to do it in about 4 years. So just a ridiculously massive feat for him and for anybody who could possibly do that. So there's a reason why he's got that award, and a massive congratulations from me, because it's definitely something inspiring to hopefully work towards down the track. If anybody's interested, Stephen sent me through a PDF of the article itself from the magazine, and it looks like they've done a special 12-page feature on him, and it breaks down all of his investments. It breaks down how he got to that point, gives a lot of tips on property investing, and talks about his story of how he started with nothing. And let me actually, probably the most impressive thing about this, and I think we touched on the interview, is that he's done all this on a single income. So as hard as it is and difficult for a lot of people, not just in Australia, but globally, to own property, you usually need a couple of people to have that dual income to be able to dive into the property market. Stephen's been extremely resourceful, and he's been able to do it all off his own bat. So that in itself is just incredible, considering that he's sitting on $2.5 million worth of property at the moment, and it's only increasing by the day. So anyway, if anyone is interested, shoot me an email, andy@lord.net.au, and I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of this PDF file. It's a great read, and if anyone is interested in property investment or is looking to purchase their first property, Stephen's definitely the guy to talk to. He's fantastic, and he's definitely somebody in the industry that really wants to put your interests first, more so than his own. So more than happy to email that through to anybody. So just email me at andy@lord.net.au, and I'll get that out to you ASAP. Last thing is now my podcast party, which I still haven't given a title to, but it's getting there. I have had some progress. So for those that have been tuning in on previous episodes, the date is Saturday, May 28th. There has been a slight change in how this is going to all pan out. So originally I was looking at a mid-afternoon shindig somewhere in the city, but it's changed a little bit time-wise. So now it's going to be at 6 p.m. And it's actually going to be at the Fun Room, which is the tiny little sneaky bar inside Frankie's Pizza. So anybody in Sydney will be well aware of Frankie's Pizza, and I think anybody that listens to this podcast will be well aware of Frankie's Pizza, as I spoke with Jordan on a previous episode. So it will be from 6 p.m. at the Fun Room at Frankie's Pizza. I'll give you more details as we get closer to it, but pencil that in. I'm more than happy for you guys to tell other people about it, but from my point of view, the only way that I'll be telling people is through this podcast. So over the coming weeks and couple of months leading up to this date, I'll reveal more information and more details about it, and then you guys will be well equipped with information before the day. So for anybody who's listening for the first time, this is purely a catch-up, just to basically an excuse to drink some alcohol and chat to people and have some fun. So even if there's 4 people, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, whatever it might be, It's all good. Come along, have a drink, and we'll have a good time. The best thing about this is that Jordan has been extremely generous and has opened up this bar early for us. Usually this bar opens at 9 p.m, but he's going to put somebody on and open it up privately for us from 6 p.m. So at least for 3 hours, we've got full reign of that bar, and I definitely need some manpower down there, or women power, to help me rack up a good bar tab down there to help out the guys for helping us with the booking of the place. So more details as we go, but it'll be from 6 p.m. at the Fun Room at Frankie's Pizza, which is pretty much smack bang down in Sydney CBD. For anybody who's interstate and is planning to come up around that time, by all means come along. And on that very rare circumstance that somebody internationally is going to be in Sydney around that time, please let me know, and you're more than welcome to come along. But it'd be great to see you guys there. I'm going to have a bunch of things that I'm thinking about doing for the night, so just to make it a little bit more special and exclusive. So we'll see how it all goes. And as I said, I'll continue to keep you guys up in the loop. That's better. So anyway, enough yapping, because I've yapped too long and I desperately need to go to the bathroom. That's why I can't talk properly. So anyway, enough of that. New episode next week. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you want to catch up on anything, go to andysocial.net. All the previous episodes are there. Go to iTunes. You can find me there. Leave a review, leave a rating. Go hard, help me out big time, share some posts around, and it all means a lot for me and a lot to me. Anyway, I'm off. Bye.
You're ready.